Hey everybody, it's Rory from A&S Gear, and we're looking at the KP3 Auto Trigger Kit today. We're going to go ahead and throw this into a KP3 and show you how to put one in case you want to pick one up and turn your standard KP3 into an auto trigger version of the KP3. So let's get our KP3 out first. Right out of there. And then let's move that over. Set of metric Allen keys, we got that, and then a caliper. Now, you don't technically need this. You could use a ruler, you could do whatever you want with it, but it will come in handy when we need to space our auto trigger position and decide where that needs to go. So what we need to do is remove the front off of here, the front grip or the pump handle off, because we need to slide the auto trigger pivot attachment point onto here. And then we need to pull this grip off and switch it with the grip that's in here. And that's very straightforward stuff. Remember, these are metric screws and Allen keys and set screws. So use those, otherwise you're gonna end up stripping out some of your screws. And you're like, why is this so loose? Why didn't this work? Well, that's why. Take these front two, and we're gonna loosen these ones up. You don't need to take them all the way out. Just loosen them up to the point where they can come off like that. And then we can leave that there. We don't need to actually take it off. You could if you wanted to. You don't need to. Next thing I'm going to do is just undo the screw that's on the ASA macro fitting and lift it up like that. That gives us access to the grip. Now we're going to undo the back screw all the way off. And then the front screw, we can just undo it a little bit, just enough to make it loose. And then the frame will actually slide off and you can leave the screw in there. You could take the screw off all the way too if you want. We're gonna get our auto trigger out in our parts kit. Now we will need to remove the ASA. I'm not actually gonna take it off. I'll show you how to do it. All you need to do is remove the bottom grip panel screw. You don't need to remove the top one. Move the bottom one, and then you can just rotate that up and out of the way. Now inside here, there are two holes. There's a hole here, and there's a hole right there. This rear hole doesn't have a screw in it. The front screw does. So you're just gonna break that front screw loose. You do not need to keep unscrewing it all the way out. Just get it loose to the point where you can slide this off. Then you'll set that to the side. You'll slide it onto the new one and do the same reverse thing we just did. That's how that works. But we're really not here for how to install an ASA. We're doing auto triggers today. I'm going to put you back on. Like that. And put this one in here. Now, if this gun was going out to a customer or something, then I would definitely switch the ASA, but it's not. This is just for show and tell. All right. So a couple things we need to look at before we do this are our pieces. We've got our auto trigger arm, a little locking washer, our screw to put it all together. This is an extra vertical ASA, or not vertical ASA, ASA screw. If you wanted to put it in the rear hole, you could also. But seeing as though this frame doesn't come with one in there already, you could pull this one out and put it in the front if you wanted to, or use the one that they give you and put it in the front, or put two in there. Take the one out and put them both in there. Whatever you want to do, it's up to you. Now, our auto trigger cam is right here. Now the cam has a flat section to it on the inside right here, which allows this, the trigger to pivot and move like this to activate the sear back here. If for some reason the cam gets rotated around, it does not allow the trigger to move correctly, which is part of how the auto trigger works. You can see if I put constant pressure on it, I'm holding it down, and I rotate the cam, how it makes the trigger articulate and move the sear. And that's how the auto trigger works inside of here. This cam is connected to this arm, which is connected to this rod. So as you move the rod back and forth, it moves the lever back and forth, which moves the cam back and forth, which allows the trigger to shoot. So that's what's going on right here. If for some reason you have the cam in the wrong position as you set the trigger up, you can run into some pretty big problems right there. It might not work at all. Well, it won't work at all. Not might not, it just will not work at all. So be careful with that. Just make sure that the trigger can go into the flat spot of the cam so that it will work properly. If you can just look at it and rotate it around and you'll see that where the flat spot is, and then just make sure the trigger can go into that. All right, that's that. Let's take this and we're gonna slide this on. So this is our little pivot point right here. Gonna slide this on. Down, 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 somewhere around here. I'm just gonna tighten it up just so it doesn't move around. Now we will want this set screw that's on the side right here to be perfectly level with the gun. It's a little off right now. It's tilting down a little bit. We'll move that in a second. This is gonna go on here like that, and then that's gonna hook up with that piece right there. And that's how we're gonna put it together. So let's make sure that this is down in there. If you look at this, you can see that one side of this is cut in a square and one side is cut in a circle. The end of the cam is square cut. So two squares go together just like that right there. You'll feel it like lock into place, like so. So what we're gonna do is, according to the manual, this little picture diagram that they have of how to set this up, they say that the space between the back of the block right here and the inside of the attachment point, the pivot, should be about 35 millimeters. And that's why I brought my cam, or my micrometer right here, so I can check that out. So let's go ahead and set this up to length so that we can just get a good starting point. All right, now a couple other ones that I have set up for this have not been exactly 35 millimeters. I have had to adjust them. So we're just gonna put it there to start with. You can see, let's make sure we're at zeros. There we go. Then we're gonna measure out 35. That's pretty close. 35.02, 35.01. So that should be in just a little bit farther. Now that's, again, a starting point. This is not the exact ending position. Because when I put them together and we go to use the auto trigger, it might not work properly. So word to you all, if you put this in here, that is not the end all spacing. Okay, so we've got this set in kind of the right spot. I actually want to raise this up a little bit more. So I'm just checking it to make sure that it is level on the out. You don't want it angled down or angled up because it will then not glide through the channel properly. It'll bind when it's inside there. Still pretty close. Let's go ahead and put our frame on. Give that a good little tighten down. All right, so that's on there. Now we can put this back on here. Once you have this on here, you're not going to need to slide it back off again. You're only going to need to adjust it. So we don't need to worry about having to slide anything off of the front grip again because we're already done with it. All right. And this would just come over and attach to our ASA if we were using it. So let's you can see that it does work without the auto trigger being connected. The gun does shoot, so that's good. Let's hold our trigger down so that our auto trigger cannot rotate. Our cam can't rotate inside of there. And then let's go ahead and link this together and make sure that this lines up. So right now, I know my trigger can be pulled, which is good. If I line up this into this position, because remember, it's cut in a square, so it will only lock in a certain way. You can see that it's way off position over there, which we don't want that. We want to get it as close to where it's going to ride up and down like this. Now, it isn't going to line up perfectly there. I can see that already. So this right here is as close as that's going to be. So I'm going to take this and just rotate it over, drop it down like that, and start putting it together. Because we want to keep this at 35, starting at 35 millimeters. Oops. I'm going to set that down. There we go. I'm holding that trigger down to keep that cam from rotating around in there. All right. See, it does not fire. It does cock back, and I can see that the hammer is cocked back inside of there, but it's not shooting because the trigger, remember, there's a cam inside there which allows the trigger to move a certain distance. The cam isn't coming far enough back forward to then allow the trigger to be pulled and release the sear. It does cock back, so the sear catches the hammer, but when we pull the trigger, nothing happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to loosen that up, and then I'm going to bring it forward just a bit. And then I'm going to make sure that it's straight on the side. And then I'm going to, now it does release, it does shoot, which is good. Now what I'm checking for is when in the cycle does the hammer release. So it shoots. If I auto trigger, which all I do is just hold the trigger down and pump, it's shooting now. But let's cock it. Let's hold the trigger down. It cocked back. Now let's slowly let the pump handle come forward, and we want to see where it shoots, where it finally releases the hammer. So we're going super slow while still holding the trigger. You can see I was right about coming up real close right now. So I'm right about there where it shoots. Now I can toy around with this a little bit by moving it just little bits and little bits, and that will change where the sear is actually released, or the hammer is released off the sear. And you can really fine tune it to where the gun shoots when it gets all the way up to here and then it releases. Because remember, it's a lot of things I'm throwing at you right here. On the inside of your bolt is your hole. And this is where the air comes up through the gun to push the ball out. If you cock the gun back and then auto trigger, and as you're auto triggering, the sear releases the hammer way back here, or when the bolt's way back here, the hammer comes forward, strikes the valve, and opens it up and lets the air out. The hole that you need the air to travel up through has not yet come back forward all the way to let the air come up through there. So you're going to lose air. You're probably not going to achieve velocity, and you're going to have a terrible time. You want to make sure that the bolt is as close to being all the way forward before the auto trigger releases. Otherwise, you're not going to shoot at velocity. You might not even work properly. So we're releasing really close to that point. See, if I pull the trigger right there, it didn't shoot. It did shoot. So we're right up on it, which is good. That's where we want to be. Now, again, like I said, we could even get closer, but it's really probably not worth it because remember, we're going to be moving pretty quick. It's not like we're going to be shooting like this. It's not how we shoot our gun. We're going to be moving quickly, so that should be a good setup. But again, you could, if you wanted to, really get it dialed in to where it's just before it kisses the back of the body right here is when it releases. And that would be perfect. I like to err on the side of having a little bit more play where it isn't just teetering right on the line right there. Give it a little bit of room. It's not going to affect anything. But that's it. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Oh, another thing I want to tell you guys is this doubles as your safety right here. So if you push that in, the trigger can't be pulled all the way. You pull it out, and that's the release of your safety. Safety on, safety off, which is pretty cool for an auto trigger setup. So that's it. I hope it helps. Make sure you measure that out to start with, and then you will need to adjust it. But this is how to set up an auto trigger for the KP3. Order yours now at ansgear.com.